Welcome back. Fabricator General here for world building. Today we're going to build on the some of the techniques that were covered in the tools video and in Way of the Rivet. If you haven't seen either of those, I hardly encourage you to go check those out. Or you can, watch this through, check out what's going on, and go back and look at those later. So we're going to take those techniques and we're going to apply them to some stuff that I got out of the recycling bin and that I got from the dollar store, and we're going to build some terrain on the cheap. We'll get some budget builds going on because we don't always have the money to be able to buy the big fancy buildings or the really spiffy spaceships. Sometimes we need to save our money for rent or food or significant others or whatever other necessities life may bring to us. So we're going to build this crash coffin. Let's see. Yeah, better-ish. The title page probably gave you the best view that you may see more conveniently. We'll take this, we'll build it up out of this deodorant container that I got from the dollar store, little sample jar. A couple of twist-off bottle caps, some of the plastic card, a toothpick, the rivets that we made in the previous video, and another gaming card. So let's get to it. One of the first things that you need to do working with various stuff, especially when you're getting unusual materials, you want to make sure that you prep them correctly. Because they were built for other purposes, they're not always optimized for being able to build terrain out of. So a lot of the plastics and such that you'll get from various different products that you're repurposing, reuse, and recycle, don't take glue or paint particularly well, or as well as we might like. So what you can do with these kinds of plastics is wash them off with warm water and dish detergent, just like you would any resin piece or any other plastic modeling piece that you might get. And after you've done that, go ahead and take either a green scrubby, or I found these copper scouring pads at the dollar store. So again, a cheap investment, but an investment that I can use over and over again on a lot of different parts, a lot of different pieces. So this is really good. You use that, you scuff it up. You could use sandpaper, but sandpaper will generally dig in too deep and will leave marks that will show up through the primer. So the goal here is that I have this plastic. Maybe you can see it on the cap better. I have this plastic of the cap. You might be able to see it better, but then again, maybe I can hold on to this one better. I'm not sure if you can see the scratches and scuffs in that. That's meant to give the paint and the glue more surface area and a rougher area to bite into, glue onto. So I want those scuffs on there for the paint and the glue, but when I'm done priming it, you see I scuff this one up too, but not so much that it shows through the primer. If you use sandpaper, quite commonly what will happen is you get the scuffing that you wanted, the glue and the paint holds, but the gouges in the plastic from the sandpaper are so deep and so large that they show in the paint job that you're putting on it. And unless you really wanted an extremely scoured up crash coffin, and maybe it's been through a meteor shower or something like that, but it doesn't always work out so well. So the little scouring pad rather than sandpaper, you get a finer resolution on what you're doing, and you get a better product, a better end product. So now we'll take our little deodorant stick that we've emptied out and rinsed out, and one of the chief things that we're doing to utilize recycled bits is we're going to change their general outline, change their form, disrupt their original look, so that hopefully the first thing you see when you glance at it is rocket ship, and then maybe later after you look at it closer you realize, oh hey, that's a deodorant stick or a bottle cap, or we'll work with a Parmesan cheese container during one of our projects. Also, different other things that we can do. So there, we'll put the cap back on. So I'm going to glue the cap on, and I've glued it with a little bit of a standoff. So there's a visual interest line there. We've got a little stylized line, and we can pick off. I've got a little piece of debris in there. So that's one of the prices that we pay for working with cheap materials, is that we have to have higher vigilance for attention to detail and pulling out little bits and chunks that might fall into the glue or disrupt what we're working for. So while we let that dry, let's work on the bulkhead door, the airlock hatch door. And we can do that by taking one of the cards we got from the dollar store in our previous casino pack, and actually this one has some sort of dimple or bend in it that must have happened while we were working on a different project. So, given that we have a full pack and that a whole pack only costs $1, let's go back, pull out a new one, and set to work on that. So this template, you can do one of two things. This, if it amuses you to do it, you can use a bottle cap from a soda bottle and use that as your circular template. Or we're going to use our circle template for the porthole hatch. Anyway, we can find out just exactly what size the soda cap is, and that is 1 1/8, and we can use the circular template to set up our door, taking our pen, make a line, there we go. One of the nice things about these cards is the plastic on them holds the glue well and holds paint well, so it doesn't warp like a piece of paper would. The downside to that plastic is it doesn't want to play well with the pen. So we've got on the template, there are reference marks around the perimeter. You can see, we'll go it that way. There's a mark there, a mark here, 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 showing you where the sides are. So I just mark those on the card so I can see that better. Then I'll move this down a little bit. Try to line it up, get it lined up fairly straight. Get that out of the way. And I was about to say, there we go, things are working great, and we've got a bad infestation of gremlins in the station today. Apparently, cosmic rays fumigation teams are not doing their job currently. These are very purge-resistant gremlins. So now that we've got those two circles drawn there, take our little mini square, straight edge, and line up the two circles and make a straight line that connects the two circles together. There we are. Can you see that? Ooh, there we go. So we've got the two circles and the straight lines, and that creates kind of an oval like you would see on the bulkhead there. We'll get this cut out. We'll roll around with the scissors and just clean that right up. Chop that out so I don't have to deal with the whole card. And come around here. That. Got my little bulkhead. Set that aside for later. Compare it against that. That's a little small. That's fine. We can compare it against, we'll take Barry here, our convenient human guide stand-in, and find that, yeah, that's a door that a human could go through. That's something that somebody jumping into an escape pod would be able to fit through nice and quickly, neatly. Let's see. So now, take the card, the hatch, and I'm just going to put it on the side of my finger, top and bottom here, straight up and down, up against my finger. Give the plastic a little flex. Put a little, pre-shape a little curve into it, because the deodorant has a little curve to the side. So that'll help. Putting a curve in the card will help the glue adhere, help it stick down. And we'll lay that in about like that. So now we're looking at putting our hatch in a hatchy kind of place. So that as you go along, you're going to find that your own natural ideas, your own vision of what an escape pod looks like will help you design this. You'll start to see this more and more like an escape pod as opposed to your dollar store treasures that you've found. So we'll get the hatch on there. Here we go. I'll let the glue set a little bit. Pop that over there for the moment. And now we'll make the porthole. Right, so for the porthole, we'll get our 10 of diamonds back. The porthole, again, you're going to make a porthole-y sized porthole. The only real key that we're looking for here is that we want the rim of the porthole to be big enough to support our 1/16 inch rivets. So on this circle template, we've got the 5/8 circle and the 13/32. There it is, right there. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the inside circle first. That happens to be 13/32 in this case. And again, it can be whatever size you want it to be. You can do anything that you want to do with it. This just happens to be the size that looks particularly porthole appropriate to me. And I'm taking advantage of the diamond. You've got the diamonds on the card, being the 10 of diamonds. And taking my little guidelines, and they happen to line up conveniently with the points on the diamonds. So I'm using a convenient reference frame on my material and optimizing with the reference marks on my template. I could draw the circle anywhere on the card and it would work out just as well. But what I'm trying to do is, by using the reference material given to me by the handy-dandy card here, when I move to the bigger circle, so I would also put that back in place. See, now I'm going back over the same ground twice, and it's taking up more time than if I had just been smart enough to do this from the start. So I've got my inner circle there on the diamond and the crosshair marks on it. Now I take my bigger circle, my 5/8 circle, and I can lay that over the same diamond. Now that gives me some opportunity to use the points of the diamond and the marks I made with the pen to help me line up and center the big circle. Once again, this can be as precise as you want it to be. We're not talking about thousandths of an inch precision. We are working with dollar store finds, but precise or imprecise, it's all as good as you want to put the effort in for it. And that's just not lined up good. So let's get that there. Throw down another line. Keep going with the pen until it makes a mark good enough to see by. That is just a little off-centered, but this porthole was probably made either on a Monday morning at the factory or on a Friday afternoon before a big holiday. Because apparently somebody was in a hurry to go get drunk, or they just showed up to work hungover. And it's not quite precise. So we'll take our scissors, cut this out, get the outer rim set. Here we are. Now another neat thing that you can do with the plastic coated cards is grab your emery board, and you can literally, if you go gently enough, if you do it precisely enough, just so you can actually smooth out and sand down the card to get some of those hard corners off. Now, if you go too hard with the file, with the emery board, you'll flatten it down, and what you're doing is the two plastic sides on either side of the card are flattening down and away, and the paper that's in between is smushing down, so you're like kind of flattening, flouring out your card, which is causing more problems than you're trying to fix. So gentle does it. You can just take the little edges off. You're not going to make a whole lot of progress out of it, but you can get just enough so that between your careful cutting and your careful filing, you can take those edges off. Now, we've got the outer rim of the card done. Of the porthole done. Now we're going to take our sharp X-Acto knife and very carefully run around the inner circle. And then once again, particularly now, you're working on going through multiple gentle cuts. Once you make the first cut, you can take the knife blade, bring it across the card, and you'll feel when the tip goes into the groove that you've made, and make another light cut. You're going around and you're making a series of small cuts, moving around, and not only do you always want to move in fine, easy cuts, doing multiple cuts to cut your line through, but now with the size of the porthole under your fingers, you're operating with the knife very close to your fingertips. So at this point, if you get frustrated, if you move suddenly, if the knife slips, you're that much closer to cutting yourself, which you don't want to do. Well, yeah, you don't want to do. That would be an entirely different channel. So we're moving around, cutting the porthole open. Well, so because you're doing this so close to your fingers, remember, always cut away from yourself. It's difficult for you to see there because I'm right-handed, camera's over here, because the Space Elk has this bulkhead here. It doesn't really allow us to film from this side. You see that as I hold this down with two fingers, you see that like that? There's always the option for me to cut along the line away from yourself. So around and around we go. And we will have this out. So as I'm cutting around, if you're frustrated and you're trying to check your progress. From one side, obviously you can see the line you've made. From the other side, you can see a dimpling line. There we go. Maybe. Depending on the light. Depending on the magic. You can see a dimple start to come out where the blade is starting to make its impression seen, and you can start to cut your way through. So let's see. Oh, we're almost, there we go. Almost all the way through. So there's another demonstration of technique, optional techniques, and why you shouldn't necessarily do them. So I flexed this out and then I pulled it off, and there we go. Hole. What could be better? Well, what that just did is, by doing that, I've left little hairy bits inside the porthole that even a Friday afternoon at the factory can't explain away. It would have been better for me to have been patient and cut all the way through, and then I wouldn't have those hairy bits. So now I need to go in and just gently running the blade around the inside and taking the little bits off. You want to do it just very lightly, let the blade just barely touch the card. The weight of the blade is pretty much doing the work. And you want to hold it very loosely and turn the blade along the curvature of the card. If you hold it too tough, pull too hard, the blade will bite into the rim and you'll have some convenient battle damage, but maybe that's not what you're looking for on your pod. So now let's take our porthole rim, lay that on top of our bulkhead hatch. We're going to put the porthole on, so we kind of want it up here, so that, that's where your face would be. The porthole is up where you can see out. So you want it near the top, but you don't want it too close to the top. You want to leave enough room for the rivets going around the top of the bulkhead door and the rivets going around the porthole door. So here we are, about like that. Get some glue out. Couple of drops of glue on the card. Being mindful that I don't glue my fingers to the card just yet. There'll be plenty of time for that. I will have glue all over myself, like right now, if you just watch long enough. There we go. So here we are, hatch, porthole, and now we can work on hinges and door latches. Right, so we'll set that aside to dry. Hinges and door latches. You can do that in a couple of different ways. There's the toothpick. This way, for this bit, we're going to do it with the toothpick, and we're going to do it with the miter box from the tool video. So just like we were talking about, got this lip here on the box, set that up against the edge of the table, take our toothpick, if I can hold on to it, put that into the box. Now, toothpick, of course, has the picky end, and it's got the handly end, and this has some nifty little notches and stuff on there to make it pretty. Got these, got a whole package of these from the dollar store, so I'm not even sure, it's like more than 100 toothpicks, so this is pretty cheap, cost effective on this. Holding the toothpick in, letting the craft saw, just the weight of the craft saw, do its own work, not pushing down on it at all. Just let the weight of the saw work its way through the material. Let the tool do the work for you. Don't force the tool. Now we've got that end cut off. We've got an end that we can work with. Let's take the emery board, clean up the splintery bits. So there's a couple ways that you can work with this. Since you're working with wood, it's going to have some splintery bits. There we go. We'll get that off of there. There's a way that you can kind of tidy this up and give it more of a metal aspect, and that would be to take white glue, water it down so that it's thin, maybe about like the consistency of milk or thinner, and paint the pieces in the white glue. And you want to do that after you cut them. That way the white glue can get in all the edges, because if you do it to the toothpick as a whole and then cut it into pieces, then you'll have the wooden ends, the uncoated glued ends from where you cut it off, and you'd have to just paint more glue on to seal the ends again anyway. So just go ahead and you do that after you cut the pieces out, like we're going to do now. So again, now that you're looking at it, you're going to take the toothpick and you're going to cut it into hinge lengths. So one of the ways that you can check and see, well, how long, how big is a hinge on this anyway, you can, you know, put it on the model, kind of look at it, hold the toothpick down with one hand, and then maybe use your thumb to just cover it up and just show you, you know, maybe that's as much as we need. Dig into it a little bit with your thumbnail, kind of make a mark on it, or just drop it into the miter box about the size that it looked like the hinge was. Put the saw blade into the 90-degree cut part, and then just a couple of cuts, and that's hinge number one. We'll just tidy that up. So another trick, once you've got something as small as that, like when I went to file off the ends from dressing it up, I moved the toothpick along the board, or you can do what you're more used to, you take the sandpaper and you apply sandpaper to the wood, and the file moves. When you get into really small pieces, it's much easier to hold on to the little piece, put the board down or the sandpaper down, and move the piece along the board rather than moving the board along the piece. Because if this, switch around, so I'm sanding, this bites or I push too hard, I can knock it out of my fingers and then it goes down on the floor, lands in the carpeting, or the dog swoops in and sucks it up because he eats everything that falls on the floor, regardless of whether it's edible or not. So all sorts of different reasons why other different things may just be inconvenient. So we'll just sand it by moving along the move the bit along the sandpaper rather than the other way around. So now it's time to make the second hinge. So making the first hinge was easy because it's custom and it's going to be whatever size we make it. Making two hinges the same size can be more tricky, can be more problematic. So what you do then, you take the remainder of the toothpick, put it into the miter box like you did before, line it up where you think it's about the right length, and put the saw in. Now that you've got the saw in there, you can either let go or just rest one finger on it. And I apologize, you can't see this very well behind my hand. So we've got the saw in the 90-degree section. We've got about that much toothpick showing there. That's going to be the hinge. What we do is then take the first hinge bit, put it in, and run it up against the toothpick, the main toothpick part, and check, is the part I'm about to cut off the same length as the hinge I've already cut? If it is, great. If it isn't, then now I can, by relaxing my finger here, lifting this finger up, The saw blade conveniently rises up a little bit, takes pressure off the toothpick, doesn't come out of the groove. I can move the toothpick around, get it to the right length. Once I have it to the right length and all my measuring is done, put pressure back down on the blade. That holds my new piece in place. Pull my cut piece back out so that the vibrations of the cutting doesn't make my first hinge leap out or onto the ground or anything like that. And now the teeth are set up so the actual cutting is made during the forward stroke. But what I'm going to do is pull back, and I'm going to make a couple of little cuts, kind of get this started, get the line set in it, and then make my forward stroke. Again, let the blade do its own work. You might feel foolish that you're taking so many strokes to cut just a little tiny toothpick, but it's better to take a little longer and get it done right the first time than to have to do it over and over again, fighting with it, trying to get it right. So now we'll make the door latch, the door handle. And as it turns out, looking at this, on a crash coffin, you've got these big hinges, and they're basically big industrial hinges like you'd expect on some sort of orbital vehicle. And the door handle, it's about roughly the same size as the hinges, so that's, you know, that's a fair-sized hinge. It may look a little small at first. If it does, you can grab one of your berries, just a random guy that you've got for scale. Take his little 28mm hand, or whatever size game you're building your crash pod for. Take his hand, put it up against the handle. Does it seem overly small? Does it seem overly huge? In this particular case, there, again, when I shove it up in your face like that, it's hard for me to see. When I shove it in my face like this, it's hard for you to see. So we'll work through that a little bit. So basically, this handle, the way it was looking, looks to me like it's probably about the size of that blade. So, yeah, I would say that a hatch door about that big on an escape pod is probably right. It's a good, robust size door that will be able to handle panicked individual running up to in a hurry and grabbing a hold of and giving a good stout yank to open, save their life. So, since the door handle and the hinges are the same size, I'll use one of my hinges to judge and see if I'm cutting it the same size. That looks good. So, move back in. Holding the toothpick in place with one hand, a couple of quick saw strokes with the other. There we go. Done and done. Got my 3 pieces. Can take the rest of my toothpick, set it aside for later. Won't need the miter box again, so we'll set that off to the side. Sure the gremlins will have it before I turn around. And we'll just dress these up a little bit. I'll even dress it up in the same fashion that I told you to, so I'll actually be doing the same thing that I said to do. So just dress that up there. That allows me to use my dominant hand holding the small bit. Gives me better control, coordination wise. Turn that around. There we go, that looks good. That looks good, that looks good. There we are. So now, this can be more fiddly, this can be a pain. So what I'm going to do is hold the stick at an angle so that the hinge, so the hinge is going to want to roll down. Like if I hold the stick flat and go to put the hinge on, it'll just roll off. So we'll hold it up at an angle, set the hinge in place, do a little dry run, grab the other hinge, set it on, take a look at it. Does it look door-like? Do I like how it looks? This is my chance to adjust to everything. We'll get maximum doorness before we do anything permanent. Take the hinges off, grab my glue, pop the cap, tear it off my fingers as it glues itself to me. Drop glue on. First hinge, put it on, move it around, get it into maximum hinge position. Ultra awesomeness. Pop the cap again. Another drop of glue. Second hinge. See, it hit the glue. It stuck. I didn't push it down because I didn't want glue on my fingers, because if I got glue on my fingers, the hinge would stick to me instead of the pod. So I just let it roll into the drop, and that's great because then you can use your knife to move it down in, and it actually rolls the toothpick into the glue, gives you better coverage, gives you a better hold. So now we've got hinges. Then this is a little, I was going to say this is a little more tricky, but this time it decided it wanted to cooperate. You have to balance the door handle on the side of the pod. Check and see where you want the door handle to be. Pop the cap. Drop glue. Install your door handle. Boop. There. Just like that. So now, hinges and door handle on. We'll let that sit and cure a little bit while we move our circle template out of the way. We won't need that again. And we'll pull out our rivet bucket. There we are. So again, if you haven't seen the rivet video, go and check out Way of the Rivet. See how we get, a nice number of rivets. It doesn't seem like it's much in here, but this will definitely work through our project. We've got our nice sharp knife. We take our little piece of plastic that we've got for a glue palette. Check and see which side we want to do. Do this side for the glue. Or maybe we'll use, here we go. Use this one. So I'll draw a new circle to see where the glue is. Put a little glue down. And we'll do our little meditative rivet mojo we saw previously. So pick up the rivet on the tip of the knife, touch it down into the surface of the glue, pop the rivet onto, you can either do the door first or the rim of the porthole first. So, small gremlin patrol in the room right now. So if there's random clattering and banging and gnashing of teeth and rending of hair, that's just your standard gremlin patrol causing chaos in the background. Sure, you're also very familiar with your own gremlin control, gremlin control issues and random chaos patrols. The rivets on the porthole, top and bottom, left and right. throwing it around a little bit, showing you how rugged it can be after you've glued it together. Rivet, glue. So there's the rivets on the porthole rim. Now we'll do the rivets on the door. Start off, so one of the suggestions, and you can set them up however you like, is maybe you can see it better on the finished product, but the porthole has basically 8 rivets around it, top and bottom, and then in the 45s. And then the door has 1 rivet directly above the top rivet in the porthole rim, and that gives it kind of a symmetry that you might expect. Then you just move around, putting the rivets on the door, with a spacing that seems appropriate. You've got, your rivety kind of spacing and making it look appropriate. You can pretty much, you can just about put them right side by side, shoulder to shoulder as you go around in a very dense rivet line, if that's your style, if that looks good to you. You can also just put, maybe top and bottom, side and side, but if you put them spaced out too far, it's not going to quite look right, so you can just sort of space them out. These are maybe an 1/8 inch from side to side. Yeah, ish. They're not a 1/4 inch center to center, but just as you go around, kind of keep an eye on it. Go with the flow. What amuses you? What looks the most rivetly appropriate? Whatever you find the most riveting. And just put your rivets on. Right here, what I did is I started at the top, I moved down, and I realized in about 2 steps, so I got to here and then saw like 2 rivets away from the door handle. So I put the rivet at the spacing that I wanted from the door handle first, and now I'll put this rivet in to the center, splitting the difference, and that'll give a better symmetrical look rather than coming down to here. And if I had put this rivet in too low, I'd have to decide to crowd to or leave an extra long gap. So by putting this in next to the door handle first, that's going to give me more control over my look. We can set that aside. So now we've got the door done. We can move on to adding the engines. So it takes a little while to get used to the idea that bottle caps can be engines. I mean, they look kind of good from that side, but there's just sometimes a little failure of trying to really grasp what's going on there. They just look like bottle caps stuck on a deodorant bar. But set them up right, look at them, close one eye and look just so, and you can see it fine. Right, so now we've got what we need to contend with is we have the writing on the bottom of the stick. So of course we don't have, well, maybe the crash pod does, says 5, recycle this if you find it on a battlefield somewhere, but I highly doubt it. So we'll rotate the writing so that the major writing, the use by date or the lot date and the recycle number, the kind of plastic that it is all lined across here, all in a line. That way when we put the bottle caps on, we'll be putting the rocket engines over all the writing, and that'll take all the writing away. To keep that from accidentally rotating back out and being visible again while we're working, we'll just take and throw a little glue onto the dial there, and that will lock that dial in place so we don't have to worry about that. Let's see, so we take some poster putty if you like, and that will allow you to put the caps on and see where you would like them to be and see if you can convince yourself that everything. And welcome back. Apparently we had some technical difficulties, magnetic storm, gremlins in the wires, something. We lost some power, and now we're back up. Got some stuff going on. So when last we saw our heroes, we had the door completely done, and we were discussing, or preparing to discuss, I'm not quite sure where we were in the video when the gremlins pulled all the wires out of the walls. But we're going to put some engines on. So we've got some poster putty here. You can get, I got this at an office store. A little bit of this, you pull it off, roll it in your fingers. You don't need a whole lot. This is a great utility, a tool, something to have handy, a resource that probably is one of the things that could have been mentioned in the tools video, but I didn't happen to think of it at the time. It's not what you'd think of as a conventional tool necessarily. So we put a little ball of poster putty there on the back end of the pod, and then we take our first engine and stick it on. Oh. And then we take our other little ball of poster putty, put it over here on this side. Put our other engine on. And at this point you can just stick both of them on however you like, or take the time and look at the teeth, the little vents around the outside of the engine, and confirm that the top center one is pointing straight up, and that's true on both sides, so that you've got nice symmetrical rockets. So there's your first go at setting them up, and I can see already that they're not quite right. And this is the virtue, the greatness of the poster putty, is that I've got these on here, the cap is slippery, the deodorant bar is slippery. Trying to put them on, holding them with my fingers, I can't see the overall picture. I can't see how well it's working. Poster putty allows me to put them on, take a look at them, see like, alright, so one is kind of outboard and the other one is almost touching the center line. So I don't want that. I think what I do want is to move this one out more. But I do want to move this one in a little bit more. There we go. So that's a little bit changed. I'm not certain how much on the screen that shows the difference, but I think that now, just looking at it quickly, you can see that it looks more right. Whether or not there was a big change in appearance, the first look of it just was off, and now that I've shifted them just a little bit, now they look more correct, more right. So with those set up, now pull one off, fish the poster putty out, make sure that's completely gone. Put my glue on. Get a good generous amount of glue there. Put my rocket back in place. Now get it all lined up nice and neat so that it looks the way I had it before. Another trick for you. Super glue, cyanoacrylate, cures with moisture. So it hardens when it hits moisture. That's why when it touches your skin, it immediately glues you to it, because the moisture, the oils in your skin, dry out the super glue and it locks. So one of the tricks that you can use is the moisture in your breath acts as a budget glue accelerator. So it is cyanoacrylate, means that it's cyanide and acrylic. The cyanide is the part that fumes out and goes away. That's what makes the nasty stink. So if you're going to use your breath to accelerate the glue, you want to hold the model away, take your breath in, hold it, and then just blow out. Don't hold it up to your mouth and take a deep breath in through your mouth and then blow out, because then you're just gonna like get a whole bunch of super glue fumes in your mouth, and they actually taste worse than they smell. It's not the world's best experience. I've done it once or twice, and I can tell you that after you do it a couple of times, you learn not to do it anymore. Not like it makes you sick or anything. It's not a health hazard. It's not something to be concerned with. It's just that it's really kind of gross. It tastes horrible. Kind of colors your day. And not pleasant. So we take the glue off. That one had enough time to dry. More generous glue here. Cap back on. Extend the life of my mediocre glue. Let's see, get that lined up correctly. Practice my skills at not running my mouth when I'm supposed to be concentrating on something. Here we are. So now our rockets are glued on. Let's hold on to this for a little bit, give the glue a chance to set. Alternately, I can set it down like that, because that's not going to change the weight or stress the joins there. If I laid it down on its side, that would give weight and probably pop them off. Hiccups all of a sudden. Do you get hiccups from cosmic ray exposure? So that might be it. That may be it. So we'll put the poster putty away. Don't need that anymore. Hopefully that'll keep it out of the hands of the gremlins. So set that aside. Actually, we'll set them side by side and marvel at how they are becoming more and more similar. So the next thing we're going to do is we take our plastic card and we're going to make the rocket ship fins. So once again, just like putting the rivets on in a rivety place and having a porthole that is all sorts of portholey and looks great, we are going to make finny looking rocket ship fins. Just real quickly, I sketched it out. So the fins that I've made are basically, there we are, 2 centimeters on a side, length and width. It's got a little tab that's probably about 5 millimeters deep that way, kind of centered on, and then the top and bottom there, the straights, they're about 4 millimeters, but again, you're just going to make a fin that looks like a spaceship fin. I'm going to do it by feel if you like, wherever you want to do it. I've got it one drawn out there on the plastic already, and once we take the time and we do the fidgety and we look at it, we make sure that it's all very finny and appropriate, cut it out, and then we can use it as, actually, we use the square. The ruler has the cork on it, and that's very helpful for keeping it in place most of the time, but it does raise the metal edge up off the plastic, so that doesn't necessarily give me the best edge there. This X-Acto square, I'm not going to have that problem with. Let's lay that on. It's much closer, much more controllable. 1, 2. Gentle pressure, just like in way of the rivet. Pop that off. Cut out the fin. One, 2, fingers safely out of the way, gentle pressure, pop that one off, throw that into a bits bucket. You never know when you might need a good triangle later on, or a brace. Could use this as a brace in a wall. A whole bunch of different things. Maybe that'll show up in another video later on down the way. So that's largely our fin. Right there. We'll cut the tab out. Now for this, cut this line. These don't need to be quite as straight. They probably ought to be. But they don't need to be because they're going to be right up against the side of the deodorant, and the glue will help cover up any gaps, you know, reasonable sized gaps. So I can't run the knife right down over it and pop it the same way that I did the other two sides here and here, because I need to keep this tab. This tab is going to be the part, this is slot A, no, this is tab A, that goes into slot B on the deodorant when we put the tab on. So we're going to have to, when you decide that you're going to make one part and then use that part as the template, you want to always use the first part as the template. So I cut this one out, use this one as the template to cut out number 2. So when I go to make the template, you know, make the lines for number 3, I want to use number 1 to make number 2, number 1 to make number 3, number 1 to make number 4. If you go through and you use 2 to make 3 and then 3 to make 4, you're going to have propagating errors. You're going to have the slight differences between 1 and 2. You're going to have the differences between 2 and 3, and then 1 and 4 are likely to look very different from each other, as opposed to 1 and 4 having the same differences perhaps as 1 and 2. Hopefully that made as much sense to you as it did in my head. If it didn't, let me know down in the comments. Find me on the forum, and I'll try to explain that better. You can also, if you're feeling researchy and adventurous, look up online propagation error, and somebody from a nice university may have a paper on it, or more likely you may be able to find it quickly and neatly in Wikipedia or something like that. Let's see, there we go. Also be crushed very easily if you've got your figs and all your stuff in the back of your car. You have to brake suddenly on the way to the game. All your stuff falls out on the, slides off the seat, lands on the floor. All your little airships that you spend all your time on might get severely damaged during something like that. Why am I using that? Could get damaged by, figs and stuff falling on them. Whereas these probably stand up to that a bit better. They can take accidental damage a little better. And just generally, have a nice solidity to them that I think just makes them a little bit better. There we go. So now we've got 3. And we'll do the 4th one. And get those all punched out. And we'll move on to a new step, another step, so that go on with that, get that done. Normally I'd like to do one step all the way through so that you can see all the pieces and then be able to go get a coffee during the tedious parts. But working with the templates and trying to pop all this out, I need to get them all done. Won't do me much good to do the entire step to show you what's going on if I glue my template in place It would be about my usual level of counterproductivity. There we go. There we are. So pop that off. 4 little triangle pieces. Use those for later. You get into gaming real good, you can begin to develop your inner gamer pack rat, keeping all your various supplies because you may need them for a project later on. And some people disparage that. They think that keeping everything is really counterproductive, but nobody will deny that gaming supplies have gotten very expensive. The prices have gone up while everybody's spare play money has gone down. With something like that going on, I mean, you really kind of need to be looking around and finding different ways to make more with less, get by better, and then you can take the spare money that you do save and use it on something better, something more extravagant. If it's not a piece of terrain or the overly expensive vehicle that you've always wanted, it could be the night out, it could be the anniversary dinner that carries you forward and gives you a particularly memorable evening at the restaurant, of course. So there we are. We've got that all set up. So now, next piece, next trick is taking these thin little pieces of plastic fin and attaching them to the curved side of the plastic that we've already said doesn't hold glue well all the time. So the way to do that, reach into the containment facility and pull out a paint that you very rarely use, or in this case I actually got this particular color for free as a surprise free gift from Reaper when I bought a bunch of Reaper figs. Reaper figs are very nice D&D stuff. Actually, they've got some sci-fi stuff too. So what we're going to do is take the paint, pull a little bit of paint out, we want to take our fin, dip the end of the tab into the paint so we've got good thick wet paint on the end. Pick up our crash pod, and now we're going to decide where a fin should be. Lay that down how we want it to be. So now we've decided where we want the fin to be. Touch it down. When you pick up the fin, the paint, there we are, the paint has left a line showing where I put it. That will allow me to cut a hole and put those in. So as far as you're saying, well, Fabricator General, I'm not really certain where a fin should go. I've never built crash pods before. So watch some Flash Gordon, some real low sci-fi. Look at different, do an image search, find out, what different pods look like. See, on this one, they kind of come off like 45-degree angles off at the corners, get a nice symmetrical look. You can put your fins however you like. Maybe, these are made by some low-paid nomad work slaves, wage slaves for Aleph, and they don't care how they're going to land. Maybe your guys are higher scale, more upscale. They've got better fins. They have more fins. However you want to do it, you could do. It would be kind of cool. You could do like one fin down the center, and then two down off. So you've got like a nice 3 fin pattern instead of 4. That'd be kind of cool. So now that we've got the paint here, you can wait for the paint to dry, or you don't really have to. You can just take your pin vise. The way you use a pin vise, we haven't talked about that yet, so this will be a good time for this. Take your pin vise. This wheel bit goes pretty much on the ball of your finger here, and then you hold on to it like you would a kind of drill, and then you spin it with your thumb and index finger, and this gives you the stability. Put the pin vise at the top of the paint line and gently, that's why you do it gently, gently apply pressure and start to slowly turn so that the pin vise will bite into the plastic. Now, you want to approach it gently, like I was saying, because this is curved plastic, it's slippery plastic, so as you go to do it, trying to find out the way that it's going to work, the drill bit might slip. It might slip towards you. If you do it real hard, you might end up driving the drill into your hand. If you do it gently, at least you have the chance to just correct and keep going. So again, this is gentle, firm pressure. This is finesse over force. Kind of leaning down on it. Mostly you're letting the drill bite in. It takes a little time. I can see, I'm not sure if you can see, but I can see the little plastic filings coming up. If you apply too much pressure, then I'm going to see the way the soda cap is on my hand. I can, if I apply too much pressure, I can pop pieces off that I'll have to glue back on. And this little thin drill bit is thin enough that if I apply too much pressure, I've watched these bits bow and bend and be permanently bent and ruined from being impatient and trying to drive the bit through the object rather than drill through the object. So you have to be willing, take your time, work through it, and there we go. It'll drop suddenly in like that. You do it at that end, and then you do it again at this end. At this point, as I look at my little line, it seems like my line is angled. So if I were to, because I'm going to go down to the bottom of the paint line, drill another hole there, and then I'll drill a couple of holes here, here, and here. So I'm basically drilling little holes to create like a dashed line, and then I'll take my X-Acto knife and cut out the plastic between those holes, and that will make me a slot. And I'll be able to put this slot, this tab into this slot. But looking at it, clearly my plastic is straight, and it looks like when I set it down as I was looking at it, I didn't have the fin lined up straight and perfect the way I might like. This is kind of angled, and it'll look goofy or sloppy later on. So I'm going to just notice how long the line is. Pardon me. How long the line is, but I'm going to move over slightly so that I can straighten out my positioning, get a better positioning. And at this point, drilling a second hole, and as you can see, it is just a dramatically tension-filled moment as I do this, because drilling the second hole is so amazingly different from drilling the first hole. That will take a little break, and I'll get some of the tedium out of the way, and we'll come back to you when there's something new to look at and when there's something more constructive to talk about. So there we go. Second hole. One hole at each end of the fin. See, we've got about 5 holes. Here we go. Spatial reasoning. 5 holes down there along the line. Take the knife. I'm going to cut through the holes from one hole to the next, and that's going to make a slot. So the easiest way to do this, and the safest way, is one, have the cutting edge facing away from you. You're going to put it down into the hole first, nice and careful, and then cut out the smallest dividers first, and that will give you some room to move so that you can cut along into the next set of holes. Right along like that. It's going to be jaggedy. It's not going to be pretty at first. It's not a big concern right now. You're going to have, in any kind of construction, when you're doing something, you have rough lines and rough holes that you dress out as you move forward and you clean up. So that's exactly what we're doing here. Just cleaning up the hole. Not necessarily the prettiest process. It doesn't have to be. Just put the blade in the part of the hole where it goes in easily. Don't try to jam the knife in. Just set it down in, and then sort of walk it back and forth. Nice and gentle, taking time. You've spent all this time drilling the holes out, so I know that you have patience. You just work through and work out your little slot. So there's slot A, tab B. We'll stick that down inside. Now most likely, see, it's actually, because we drilled where the paint was, the paint's lined up here, the hole is just slightly smaller than the slot. And that's to be expected, because now your first slot that you're cutting out is just a rough dimension. So you start working out the edges just a little bit, kind of make it a little bit longer on each side. You can't make very much progress doing this, but you can make enough. Sometimes it makes the difference. Check again. Closer, but not still there. So now, on our fin, we've got really square lines right here. We're going to taper those a little bit. We'll just go from the body of the fin down this way. We'll just taper this off. Watch your fingers.
I have no idea who would want to hurt Noah. He was a good man.
And there.
We were on the airplane together.
So,
How long have you been in there?
not square sides now.
5 days. In there?
Take the fin. Now
You do know it hasn't rained.
it fits in the hole. So now it goes in, and it goes all the way in, and it sits nice and flush up against the body, or maybe you can see with the contrast better on that side. But maybe, yeah, see, it's not at the right angle for me. It's sitting up too straight. I'd like to have it kind of go down a little bit more, give it kind of more of that racer look there. So what we'll do, we want it to lay down that way. So we're going to carve out this side of the slot to remove some plastic and allow the fin to lay down more. And just keep working the hole, keep working the slot until it allows it, there we go, to look the way you want it to look. So as that goes, now we're going to do that 3 more times. Or I'm going to do it 3 more times. And I'm going to do that 3 more times, and I'm not going to force you to watch because it'll be just as nail-biting exciting the next 3 times as it was this particular time. And rather than glue, get to this point and glue this in, I'm going to do all 4 fins and then glue them in once I can put them all 4 in place, and that will allow me to do my various different adjustments and get everything all set. I wouldn't want to get this one glued in and then for some reason when I come around to number 4 have my symmetry off or have something else happen in between that makes me wish that I hadn't glued that in very much. Right, so back we've got the 4 slots for the fins. All set. We've got the 4 fins here, so they're all set out. Now we'll go and start to work on initially gluing them in. So there's the prelim angle. Kind of see how the fins are on there. So we'll let those dry a little bit, and we'll talk about a handy little tool, nifty little supply called floral wire. Now floral wire is just thin. This particular wire is 18 gauge. Says so right there. Got let's see. Got the dropsies again. Floral accessories, 18 gauge florist wire, 18 inches long. So 20 pieces, $4. I didn't get this from the dollar store. I got this from the fabric store. So you go into like the fabric stores where they have like the foam and the silk flowers and all the other sort of silk flower, fake flower arrangements. That's the place where you'll find this stuff. Pick this up. It's cheap wire. You can get a hold of it easy. It's already straight. This is the kind of stuff that you use for pinning models. If you have models that have very fine joints, thin joints, you need to, like the shoulder on an arm has been broken off and you don't have very good contact patches to be able to glue it, then you use your pin vise, drill into both sides, put this piece of floral wire in, and that will increase the strength of that joint. But that's a different story for a different day. So it happens to be that, coincidentally, the bit in the vise is 18 gauge. The wire is 18 gauge, but that's not what we're doing. What we're doing is taking our needle nose pliers from the tools video with the wire cutter, and we are going to cut a piece of wire to put down there, and that will support the fin. So I put the wire into the jaws. I've got a little bit sticking out on that side. I can now drop the wire on the floor, picking it back up and repeating the process. Put the wire in, switch it to my other hand so I can use my dominant hand to pick up the ruler, and I can measure out by hook or by crook, measure out the right length for the fin. Once I get the right length all set up. Now, if I just clip this, doing this typically, and it would be smart for you to have safety glasses on, or I can control, if I just clip this, the wire would go shooting, and that would go shooting the other way. Might bounce off something, come back, hit me in the face. So, get a hold of the wire, I take loose end, put the part that I'm cutting into the board, hold the other part with my hand, cut, and I heard it click, but it didn't fall, so I can just move the wire, and it drops off. Now that I've got one piece, I can confirm it's a little longer than I'd like. So this time, put the wire in. I can do it either way. I can stick the wire through so that the short little bit is coming out where I can see it and I can see how much I'm going to cut. Or I can go the other way and go in from this side so that just the little nub is in there. Now, this time, the little dangerous shooty piece is in there. I put that down against the board, hold the other end of the wire, click that, flick this off, short little piece of wire into the trash. Got that the right length? Yep. So now, before I glue this on, I use this as the template. Line that up. Put that into the plier. That's 2. Again, just like before, my template piece I keep using over and over. That way I don't end up with propagation errors. That's 3. And then the last one. So, ship's clock says that we're getting ready to come around out of the shadow of the planet, coming up on local daytime. So if it seems like I'm dragging AM, we're coming up on sunrise here soon. So we'll work through this. We'll put the floral wire back into the pile of other sundries where it will be waiting for the next time I need it. Now that we've got our 4 braces, basically, take my brace and I'm going to set it inside here. So on here, I already have the braces in there. You can see the wires probably now. Where they are inside this angle, that means that most likely whoever is looking at this is either looking here or here. So it looks neatly like these are welded straight in. They're less likely to notice the wire in there. That's partly because you generally don't look at it side on. You admire it from this side, you admire it from this side. And the shadows from the fins help conceal the presence of the wire. So we're going to set these inside the angles. And then we'll glue that one back in a minute. But we don't want the still wet glue to glue itself to my leg. Handy dandy X-Acto knife does the repositioning so I don't stick my fingers into wet glue, break everything and drag it everywhere. That's all set. We'll flip it over. A little glue in there. Second wire into the gap. Get that all set. This is a little spindly connection here, so we did glue before and we'll do glue after just to make sure that we've got it good and solid. Flip this over. A little glue into the gap there. Throw the wire in. Work the fine adjustment with the blade. Lean that back down to the angle that I want. And glue again. And that little bit of wire in there will act as a brace to make sure that that stays just so. So here's a good safety tip for you. Working with the cap, working with the glue, you see that the cap is on my hands. Got glue on almost all of my fingers. Almost all of them. That is a very key, important piece of information for you to keep track of, because when you get this hand full, drying model, this hand almost covered in glue, and you have a maddening itch on your face, it's key to remember which of your fingers don't have glue on them for when you need to deal with that crazy itch. And it will happen. Yet another law of the universe. You will have an itch that will drive you nuts at the worst possible time while you're working with your hands full. There's actually even, it's a key plot point in one of the Old Norse myths that one of the dwarfs was working on Thor's hammer, and he was supposed to keep the bellows going on the forge to make sure that the metal stayed hot enough to flow into the mold correctly. And Loki, who would lose a bet if this hammer was made correctly, turned into a horsefly and landed on the guy's nose and bit him until the blood started running down his face, so that, you know, he'd finally swat, and that meant that he wasn't operating the bellows. The metal didn't flow correctly, and the hammer had a handle that was too short. Then when Loki came back later, he complained about the shoddy workmanship and got it for free. So there, now bad story out of the way, and everything glued on, and we have achieved shoddy crash coffin. There we go. I think we've very definitely established that this is somebody's last crash coffin at the factory, because they are most definitely not just getting written up, but I think they're going to take a long walk out, a short airlock, for doing such a bang up job, unless they can get prime cash from Aleph for it. Well, anyway, there we are, crash coffin, dollar store build. So not going to count the cost of the caps because I drank the soda and I enjoyed it, so I already had that on hand. The toothpicks had around, that's $1 for a whole pack, $1 for the whole pack of cards, so that's pennies. $1 for the deodorant, a couple of bucks for the sign, but like I said, that's been around for years, so I'm still getting my money back out of that. $1 for the floral wire, but that'll last me a long time too. I mean, that was 20 pieces, and you can see that there's still like 10 left in there, so there's years left in that pack. All on the cheap, little piece of terrain, it's all good. Go forth and conquer. I'm a little delicate setting that down before anything else falls off. Come check us out, spectrestudios.us. Take a look over stuff, dig around, say hi to me in the forum, and we'll carry on with some more budget builds later on, and maybe some product reviews. Let me know in the comments what you'd like to see. Have a good night. Okay, so now that we've got our crash coffin all completed, the next step to take away some of this deodorant bar looking kind of ness with the soda caps and such, it's going to take just a budget build with the $5 can of spray paint from a local big box store. Give that a little bit of a shake. We'll be able to throw that right onto the crash coffin, and you can kind of see that this is starting to get away from the recognizable look that you would expect from the recycled bits and all the various different things. It's a little bit easier for the eye to kind of see these as rocket jets, a little bit easier to kind of see the rest of the body as more of a streamlined sort of airship sort of looking thing. You don't need to necessarily go with Arrest Me Red for your luxury sports car. You can go with any of your favorite primers or any other colors. Maybe you're kind of favoring sort of an old school NASA kind of feel with the space shuttle kind of look, a little white coming in, scrub it up from orbital re-entry. And you can do it however you might like. The next step will be for us to put some more detailing on, maybe some water slide decals or dry rub decals that we might use from some of our old race car models that we may have still around or that you might be able to find in a discount bin someplace. So the next step will be to put more detailing on it, and we'll talk then. And that'll take care of our first of many budget builds. We'll be able to work on different such things. And thank you very much for viewing. Come by and visit me at the forum, spectrestudios.us. You'll find a link right there to the forums. It'll be under terrain time. And look for different links to different things and other like PDFs, pictures, and other people's comments. Have a great day.